Hello everyone, welcome back to my YouTube channel again. And today I have with me a very special guest, Dr. Anujeet. I know him from Twitter. I've followed his tweets for quite some time now. Writes very insightful, cunning tweets, and at the same point of time, a great researcher and someone I'm very proud to have today on my channel. Dr. Anujeet recently completed his MS in ophthalmology. I'm so sorry, I keep on saying MD sometimes because it's in names, it's actually MD. He recently completed his MS in ophthalmology from Mahatma Gandhi Medical College in Pondicherry. He's originally from Calcutta, as you want to call it, and just recently went back home. So I thought, since the residency season is going to start and the counseling is going to start, I thought why not make a video about it, about how ophthalmology as a residency is, and some other tidbits about that. So hi, Anuj.
Hi, Dr. Aditya. Honestly, it's a huge fanboy moment for me to be here. You're doing a lot of great work, and we can get started.
Yeah, I think we can get started. So the very first question I simply want to ask you is like, a lot of people will be, although we do have our exposure of ophthalmology during MBBS, I believe exposure to any the residency part of any subject during MBBS is lacking. We just go there, we see cases, we examine probably, and we come back. So my first question to you is like, how is residency in ophthalmology like? The work hours, the work-life balance and stuff like that? And at the same point of time, who should take the pros and the cons, and who should take it and who should probably not take it? Just a general question.
Sure.
You can go about it. Yeah.
Right. So firstly, like you just said, in undergraduate or in internship, you're exposed to ophthalmology, especially for a really brief period of time. And the first thing that I tell people when they ask about residency is that please get your undergraduate or internship notion of ophthalmology out of the window, because most of the times you are just shining a torch into a patient's eye and literally you don't see anything and the patient is obviously blinded by your torchlight. So if possible, try and get that notion out of the window. Now that when that notion is out of the window, you are looking at ophthalmology just like you're looking at any other subject without any bias from your undergraduate life. So firstly, it is a medical as well as a surgical branch with fixed work hours and with relatively less emergencies. In fact, the only emergencies that we see other than your regular papilledema calls and stuff is maybe in children, orbital cellulitis or preseptal cellulitis, for which we have to admit patients, and in adults maybe optic neuritis or something like that, unless it's a pure ophthal case and we admit directly from the casualty. So as a residency, you have fixed work hours, you have very less emergencies so to deal with. And on a day-to-day basis, the only thing that separates ophthalmology from other departments, so to speak, are two things. Number one is that you cannot see every patient in your first go, because for every patient, for you to do a full examination, the patient has to get a vision and a refraction done, following which, after you see the patient's anterior segment or the anterior part of the eye, you have to dilate the patient to see the posterior segment. So the examination of a patient in ophthalmology is actually an affair of about 40-45 minutes, even if you're really good at it. So a lot of the residency depends on how smartly you manage your patients, how smartly you can manage your posterior segment cases and your anterior segment cases during residency, and mostly about managing time within the period that you have, because after 5 p.m. or after 6 p.m., especially after your first year of residency, it is quite a chill branch. Coming to some cons, one very important con that I'd like to mention in very brief is that most people fear ophthalmology because they feel that it is an end branch and because there's nothing beyond what you want to do in MS. Also, the fact that it is a microsurgical branch, so there is some amount of, I would say, dexterity involved in using these instruments. So while that is partially true, when you enter your residency, you will take about 6 to 8 months to get the hang of using a microscope, because very honestly, when a patient is lying down, the eye is about this much in terms of its height. So you will have to manage all your instruments in this much of a space. So it's not that difficult, but binocularity, stereopsis, understanding depth is an issue. And other than that, one final thing is that it can get slightly expensive as a branch, even when you're starting off, because just like in NEET PG or when you're students, you would always want to have your own books or your own notes to study for an exam. Similarly, when you're resident, you want to have your own instruments or your own lenses to examine a patient. And if you're going to buy from an Indian manufacturer as well, you will need a direct ophthalmoscope and indirect ophthalmoscope, a couple of lenses. So that will definitely set you back about 70 or 80,000, even if you go for the cheapest brand and you feel like cycling off. So keeping in mind that the fact that it's slightly expensive as a branch in the beginning, as well as when you're going to set up your own practice, keeping in mind that there is a bit of binocularity and a bit of dexterity involved in the surgical aspect. Mind you, only the surgical aspect of ophthalmology, and you can make a career without the surgical aspect. It is a very chill branch. It is a branch with a lot of nuances and a lot of new advances. And the last thing is that the UG short case, the most famous UG short case is cataract. So when people ask me whether they'll get patients or whether it's a dead branch or not, I usually tell them that for every other specialty, a patient comes to a doctor because he or she is suffering from an ailment. But cataract is actually the normal aging of the lens. Everyone's lens will slowly become dense over time. So in reality, if you are a decent ophthalmologist, you are dealing with normal patients coming to you with their problems, normal patients coming to you with defective vision. And this is just leaving out all refractive errors and surgeries and all the latest nuances and LASIK and all that coming up for it. So there is scope, there is a fixed work life, there are few emergencies, there are a couple of drawbacks, but all in all, I feel it's a good package.
So I remember, since you said that they're coming with a novel, I remember one of my seniors saying some statement on the line that while everyone else in this country will have 1 billion patients, we actually have like 100 crore patients. We have 200 crore patients because every person has two eyes.
Absolutely.
So, and everyone will get a cataract sooner or later, not just in one eye. But
exactly. Exactly. I was being told by somebody who recommended Opthal to me that if you are a good ophthalmologist, a person will come to you for his right eye cataract surgery. If you do a good surgery, he'll come to you for his left eye cataract surgery. Then he'll bring his parents or his wife or his best friend. So without having the hassle of having an inpatient department or keeping a patient or having a very sick patient or something like that, you have the ability to have a loyal patient that comes to you every couple of years for treatment.
Sure. So I think you have pretty much elaborated on most of the things. If you want, if someone is watching this interview and wants a much more in-depth review of ophthalmology, he has written actually an excellent blog post which I read yesterday. I'll give the link in the description and I'll give the link in the pinned comment. Please do read it. In fact, it pretty much clears everything, most of the doubts people tend to have about how the residency is and what the branch is about and everything. The second question I actually want to ask you, because you were in a very unique position. So you are from Calcutta and you are in your house right now in Calcutta right now. And you went to Mahatma Gandhi Medical College in Pondicherry.
Right.
Where the local language most likely would be Tamil, right? So,
yes.
So a lot of people who will probably be in North India or in our state would probably feel that maybe going to a state in Southern India, language will act as a barrier in them learning skill or in them, just being a good clinician or whatever it is, whatever the roadblock or mind block that they have in their mind. So how did you navigate through it, and what are your thoughts about this particular doubt that a lot of people in North India and in South India tend to have? Like people in South India will be like, should we go to Delhi because we'd have to learn Hindi and stuff like that? Yeah.
So I can speak for my background and what I faced and my little objective nuanced points on whether it would work for somebody else. So firstly, the doctors are the same. The treatment is almost the same. I think the biggest difference that I personally felt being someone from West Bengal going to the South is that the South has a really heightened sense of responsibility and discipline. In North India, or at least in West Bengal, if I may speak for my state, everything works slightly slowly. Everything takes a bit of time. But in South India, if the surgery starts at 8 p.m., right from the HOD till the attender is here by 7:55, punching in, getting stuff ready, etc., etc. So that is probably the first difference that you will face if you're somebody from the North going to the South, because they have fixed work hours. They start off really early, and the discipline is something that takes a bit of time getting used to. As far as the language barrier is concerned, if you're going for your residency, you will have a lot of support from the sisters, from your interns, from the medical students as well. It's actually harder for an MBBS student to travel between states than an MD or an MS student. That is what I personally felt, because somehow or the other, the gap in the language is carried on or taken over by someone else. That does not mean you do not learn the language. I find it very absurd that when somebody returns back 3 years later and tells me that I completed my residency from XYZ state, but I cannot speak a single word because somebody helped me out or something like that. That is not the idea that I want to propagate. You should take the effort to learn at least the ophthalmic or the subspecialty aspects of the language, because later in your practice, if you meet someone from the state, you can at least carry out a conversation with them, and it sort of builds a sort of a rapport with the patient as well. But the language is not a problem, particularly in residency, because you will have a support system. As far as the difference in the residency itself is concerned, the South has a much more disciplined approach. The academics are much more regular. There is no ground to say that it is better in the South or worse in the North or anything like that. It completely depends from institution to institution and from teacher to teacher. Obviously, you cannot, I mean, this is a very propagated notion, and South education is something, yeah. So I don't want to say that, but it is much more regular because I have seen the webinars and seminars. So that would be the only difference that one would need to get used to.
I would say something on the lines that Jaisi Raja, Vaisi Praja. So South states in general tend to be more disciplined.
Exactly.
Colleges are more disciplined, but the same. Although I will not, I'm from, I did my residency from AIMS. AIMS had excellent academics, but again, it's a central institute, so I obviously can't say. But I know people who are from RAMC, I know people who are from LH, I know people who are from UCMS. Even they said that their academics are pretty regular. And then again, Delhi as a state, again, Jaisi Raja, Vaisi Praja. So state is a bit fast-moving state. Similarly, let's say some colleges in, I know my fiance is in Jaipur. She also does have, maybe not as regular as I would hope, like, you know, since I'm from but even SMS Jaipur has regular academics, regular JCs and stuff like that. So again, it's very institution to institution dependent, like you said. She talked with one of her friends who was in Jodhpur and who said that academics are a bit lagging. So you cannot say pinpoint again north and south, this thing is happening and this thing is not happening. Again, like I said, institution to institution. So and like you said, that language is something which will people around will help, and you should still. I remember one of my seniors. He went to AG Institute in Mangalore. Actually, he did a surgical residency there, and he learned Kannada over a period of time. And to the point that, like you said, he came back to Chandigarh for a senior residency. And there he met someone from Karnataka and spoke in Kannada. And then suddenly that rapport was built.
Exactly.
So he was telling me about that experience. Okay. So I think you're pretty much clear about the language part and everything. Shouldn't that be an issue? The third thing I wanted to ask you was that, and telling it from people, a lot of people tend to think that ophthalmology is either a dead branch or B, it's a saturated branch, and somehow it's not as desired as I can understand the reason for desire, why people tend to desire radiology a lot, or why people tend to desire dermatology a lot, because these branches have, in general, as compared to any other branch, much lower work hours and lesser responsibility, so as to say. And these are branches which are desired not just in India, all around the world, be it US, UK, or Russia, or Australia. Radiology and dermatology are preferred by medical graduates all over the world because of the work-life balance and the lesser responsibility part. But there's a stark difference, let's say, between US and India. In US, there's the concept, something is called as the road to happiness, where the road branches are considered the most desirable branches, which is radiology, ophthalmology, anesthesia, and dermatology. While radio and dermatology are still considered very desirable branches, as stoppers say and go. I cannot understand why ophthalmology is given a step motherly treatment, I'll say, or something on those lines. What people tend to believe that it's saturated, or people tend to believe it's there's something अच्छा या तो rank पीछे आई होगी या फिर
exactly.
क्यों किया होगा, and something on those lines. What are your views about it, and if you want to dispel some myths about it or something on those lines? Because I felt it to be a huge blown up myth. I don't know why it was there and why it has percolated so much. And what are your insights about that?
So there are two aspects that I see. The first is something that I mentioned a couple of minutes back about the undergraduate exposure. So because our exposure is more to the larger, the medicine, surgery, gynae, the bigger based subjects, it somehow comes into our head that these are subjects that we would prefer. And because if the ophthalmology undergraduate course is basically just cataract and diabetic retinopathy and a bit of glaucoma and retina squeezed in the middle. So we do not understand how vast it can be and how I feel seeing is believing. We do not see half the diseases that we read about in ophthalmology. So we don't believe in them. We think it's there somewhere at the back, and somehow the interest is never sparked at the undergraduate level.
Kuch hota hoga.
Exactly. It's there. It's somewhere over there. I mean, what is AMD? What is this thing? What is hypertensive retinopathy? It just becomes narrowed. I'd rather read about the heart. So that is number one. Number two is that because ophthalmology residency is, like I said, it takes almost 6 to 18 months for a resident to be well coordinated in their hand-eye coordination. So you will need hand-eye coordination both for your OPD skills to use an indirect ophthalmoscope, plus you will need it in your OT. So because it takes a lot of time for a medicine or for a surgery resident, within the first 1 or 2 months, they can start doing emergency procedures easily. But you will always see the ophthalmology first year resident running behind the second year resident, because the second year resident has to see the case and then distill the findings to the first year resident. So because of this long training period, most ophthalmology residents, when they pass out, they become comprehensive ophthalmologists only. They do not have a specific focus on what they want to do, because they spend a lot of their residency just figuring out the subject. But once they figure it out, it's an open game for them. So because they pass out as comprehensive ophthalmologists, they have a lot of knowledge in all subjects, but their specialty is still dependent on them doing a training. It was told to me, and I would like to tell everyone else, that a residency will teach you to do cataract surgery, but you will need training to become a cataract surgeon. There is a huge difference between knowing how to do cataract surgery and being called a cataract surgeon. The same thing with anybody, doing a laparotomy and being a surgeon of it. So the same thing goes for cataracts. So because of this, a lot of ophthalmologists somehow get stuck, either because of the financial constraints of having a center or investing in a center, which is much less for any other subspecialty, or for the training which they have to undergo following that. So maybe because of these two issues, there is a notion of stagnation in their minds, because this does not go, you cannot align these two at the same time. Either one gets aligned or the other gets aligned. Both getting aligned is sort of difficult. So at the undergraduate level, it's probably the lack of the perception, but at the postgraduate level, maybe it could be because of this.
Do you believe that there's some amount of saturation in the branch, is something which everyone keeps on saying? I believe it to be a myth. I believe that there are 200, 200, crore eyes. How can there be a saturation in this branch? But just wanted your views on it. Yeah.
So if you're in a tier 1 city, there may be a bit of saturation, because a tier 1 city has they have tertiary and quaternary centers which provide everything. For example, everything that you do in ophthalmology right now can be substituted by a machine, which is maybe an unfortunate or a very fortunate thing for us. Whatever you see, you can quantify it. It's not a qualitative finding anymore. So that is the first thing. So tier 1 cities, there might be a mild saturation in general, but as soon as you move from the main city block, there is no saturation. Unless you're from one of the 4 big cities or the 6 or the 8 big cities, I think if that is not the case, you can do really well in ophthalmology. There is always room for people.
I would elaborate on that as far as this big city aspect is concerned, this is pretty much valid for any branch right now.
Any branch, exactly.
Any branch right now, be it pediatrics, not just pediatrics, be it doing your super specialization after pediatrics, be it medicine, or even after doing your super specialization after medicine, even a cardiologist right now, or even a nephrologist right now, or a gastroenterologist right now, if you want to be in the tier 1 cities that he talked about, the big 4, the Chennai, the Bombay, the Delhi, and the Calcutta, and adding Bangalore, Hyderabad, and Bangalore, Hyderabad to the mix. Right now in these cities, the trend of super specialization and further specialization actually has settled in. So in these cities, there's some amount of saturation. If you want to practice in literally in these cities, there's some amount of saturation which is there for pretty much every branch. I'll give my example. For example, I'm doing my DM in pediatric oncology. And even right now, I am told that just a DM in pediatric oncology won't suffice. Okay, so you probably would have to do a fellowship either in bone marrow transplant, or you would have to make your niche in solid tumors, or you have to make your niche in some other things like that. If you want to settle in Delhi, because I am from Delhi. So this is pretty much valid for every branch right now. That so it's not just ophtha specific. And like he said, again, from my point of view, if I just move to slightly, just like let's say Jaipur or Lucknow or something like that, the world is your oyster after be it ophthalmology or be it any other branch. So that thing should have been kept in mind. The last question I want to ask is, so that the interview doesn't run long, is about research and what are your views about how, if some resident is really, really interested in research and you have quite a few publications to your name and quite a few laurels to your name, how should he approach residency, and what can he do in order to ensure that a residency is fulfilling one in terms of research as well, getting papers published and being an academician in general? Yeah.
Right. So I'll share one very unpopular opinion. I believe in this. Maybe you might not, or the audience might not. Is that in residency, we usually, when we start off, we get a thesis and we take a thesis and we put it on our heads as that is our do all and end all research. But honestly, what I felt is that when we start off our residency, we are the dumbest that we can be. We only have the option of getting smarter and smarter. And down the line, our thesis is in most colleges all around the country, either taken from somewhere in Google where we just change one word or one attribute, or we use the word in South India or in male population or something like that. Or it is something that our guide gives us because it is something that our guide probably has been wanting to do for a while, and he needs someone to do it for him, at least collect the samples. So taking that into consideration, maybe the whole thesis thing, in my opinion, is a little exaggerated. Definitely, it teaches a resident into the whole nuantic aspect of research, how to collect and how to this and how to do that. But if somebody wants to get into research, you can do your thesis well and good. But the easiest way to get into research is to just take a case and write a case report, or collect a set of cases and work on a case series. Because what that teaches you to do is that it teaches you to handle a few references at a time, distill a discussion, as well as present it and go to a journal and see what the journal wants from you. So there are a couple of nuances over here. The first thing is that as soon as you write your first case report, you will realize that putting everything in the case report is not the answer. You need to start as close as you need to the end. If you gave a patient a treatment for something and the patient ultimately died, do not start with the patient's family history. Start from the patient came to the hospital, and what you did for the patient, what happened to the patient. Everybody loves a short and crisp case report or a short and crisp case series. The second thing is that most people are very afraid of is that whenever I ask a resident, they're like, okay, I'm working on this, but it's still in this process where I'm editing it, or my guide is editing it, or something like that. So what I tell them is that you do one edit, you do another edit, and please submit it. Because when you submit it to a journal, and please aim for the highest journal in your specialty, unless it has some sort of a fee for actually submitting the manuscript. Because what that does is that you get a review from the journal, even if your paper gets rejected. So if you for me, suppose if I submit to the American Journal of Ophthalmology and my case report is something very simple, maybe diabetic retinopathy and Sturge-Weber syndrome or something like that, some very rare case with a rare finding. I'm not sure how to present it. My guide is not sure. I am tired of doing the review of literature. I am tired of writing the discussion. I don't know what else to put in this. Get it into some form and submit it. The American Academy will reject it, but we'll tell you why.
Very interesting take. You're basically asking, you're basically making sure that the job of editing and re-editing and thing is basically sort of being taken care by that journal itself.
Exactly. And you can choose the journal where you feel it'll get accepted in, and make the edits and submit it in that journal.
I actually will agree to his point of view. So my thesis recently got published 2-3 months back in a recent journal, Nutrition and Cancer. Before that, I had submitted it in a journal called Journal of Global Oncology. It's an offshoot of Journal of Clinical Oncology, so I felt it to be a big journal. While the journal did reject my paper, the review points that they ended up giving me, I ended up incorporating them into my final article. And then when I submitted it to Nutrition and Cancer, they did not really came up with any major reviews. They just came up with minor, grammatical errors or some small tidbits and changes, and then they published it. So I would agree to him on this point. Have gone through this actually in the exact way that he probably has. If you're aiming for a journal, just go for the highest journal possible. They will edit it out and stuff it out for you for it to become easier for a next journal that you probably be hoping for.
Even for MBBS students who have these ICMR grants and they've published a paper, half of them are stuck somewhere in the middle. So when they come to me, I just tell them, you choose a journal and you publish it. You cannot think anymore. It's not possible humanly to think anymore about this project because you got it maybe 2 years back. How much would you know then about it anyway? So that's my take on research. But
I would agree with you in this aspect that getting the the samples, asking the history and putting it on the computer is the easier part. The writing is a tough part for people, and you do get stuck. Sort of a writer's block, I'll say, or in a way. And so in that way, it's better that just submit it, whatever draft that you have, and let them do the work for you.
Exactly. Telling a story is the most important aspect because the facts are always with you as a doctor. You have to tell a story and keep the journal interested. So a journal will indirectly do that for you.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, thank you, Anujeet. It was a very illuminating talk. I think people will really enjoy it. Anyone who watches it will really enjoy it. I hope you all the best for the future, and hopefully, I hope you come here in Delhi. We meet over
absolutely
sometime over a cup of coffee and maybe chit chat as well. All right.
And thank you so much, Aditya. I mean, it's been a pleasure. Firstly, it's like a pinch myself and believe it sort of a moment. But I wish you all the best. You're doing really well, and I hope you continue doing this.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. All right.
Okay.